The chains burned through scales like molten iron, and Kravex could barely draw breath. His sister Myraeth lay beside him in the snow, her golden eyes dimming with each passing moment. 3 days they had been here, captured by the Zelkori hunters who had ambushed them during their migration across the frozen wastes of Callisto. The alien slavers had wanted specimens, living trophies from the last dragon colony in the outer systems. Kravex tried to move his wing, but the electromagnetic shackles tightened automatically, sending waves of agony through his body. The Zelkori had designed these restraints specifically for their kind, drawing power from their own bioelectric fields. The more they struggled, the tighter the chains became. Smart, cruel. Blood from his wounds had frozen into red crystals around them. Myriath's breathing had become shallow. She was younger, smaller. She would die first. Through the blizzard, a shape emerged. Kravex's failing vision tried to focus. Too small to be a Zelkori, too vertical, moving with purpose through snow that should have stopped any creature its size. A human. Kravex had heard stories about humans from the colony elders, the strange bipeds from Earth who had somehow stumbled into galactic civilization only 40 years ago. Weak individually, soft-bodied, with no natural weapons or armor, yet they had fought wars that shook entire sectors. They had a reputation among other species. Crazy, unpredictable, dangerous when cornered. The figure came closer. It wore a thermal suit marked with faded letters Kravex could barely read. The human stopped 10 feet away, looking at the two dragons with eyes hidden behind a frost-covered visor. Kravex tried to speak, but only managed a weak rumble. His translator implant flickered, nearly dead. The human tilted its head, studying the chains, the wounds, the slave collars around their necks. Then the human did something Kravex never expected. It reached up and pulled off its helmet, exposing pale skin to the killing cold of Callisto's surface. Short, dark hair, female features. She looked young even by human standards, maybe 20 cycles. Her breath created clouds in the negative 200-degree air. She should have been dead in seconds. Instead, she smiled. Not a friendly smile. A smile that promised violence. She pulled a small device from her belt and held it up so Kravex could see it through his fading vision. A military-grade plasma cutter. Human military. The woman spoke, her voice transmitted through her suit's external speaker, even though her helmet was off. Her lips were already turning blue. "I'm Lieutenant Amy Carter, Earth Defense Force. Those Zelkori bastards killed my crew 3 days ago." She walked toward Kravex's chains, the plasma cutter igniting with a white-hot flame. "Let's see how they like fighting something that fights back." Amy pressed the plasma cutter against the first chain link. The electromagnetic shackle detected the interference and sent a pulse of energy through Kravex's body. He roared in pain, his remaining strength nearly spent. The human didn't flinch. She adjusted the cutter's frequency and tried again. The chain began to glow. The shackle's defensive systems kicked into overdrive, pulling power from Kravex's bioelectric field at a dangerous rate. His heart stuttered. Myraeth made a weak sound beside him. "Come on, you piece of junk," Amy muttered, her exposed skin now covered in frost. Her hands were shaking from the cold, but she held the cutter steady. "Break, damn you." The chain snapped. The sudden release sent Kravex's wing crashing into the snow. Pain flooded through him, but it was different now. The feedback loop was broken. He could breathe. Amy moved to the second chain, then the third. Each time the shackles fought back, each time she persisted. By the time she finished with Kravex, her fingers were white and stiff. She should have put her helmet back on. She didn't. Instead, she moved to Myriath. The younger dragon could barely keep her eyes open. Amy worked faster now, her movements becoming jerky as hypothermia set in. The plasma cutter flickered once. Twice. No. Amy slammed it against her thigh. The device sputtered back to life. She cut through Myriath's chains with grim determination. When the last chain fell away, Amy collapsed to her knees in the snow. Her lips were purple now. Ice crystals formed in her hair. She fumbled for her helmet, but her frozen fingers couldn't grip it properly. Kravex forced himself to move. Every muscle screamed in protest. He extended his wing over the human, using his body heat to shield her from the wind. It wasn't much. Dragons were cold-blooded in these temperatures, but it was something. Amy finally got her helmet back on. She lay there for a moment, drawing in heated air from her suit's life support. Then she laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. Stupid. That was really stupid. She pushed herself up slowly. But we're not done. The Zelkori hunting party is camped 2 kilometers northeast. 6 of them. They have weapons that can drop a dragon from 500 meters. She looked at Kravex with eyes that burned with fury. They also have my ship's black box. I want it back. Kvex's translator implant flickered to full power as his bioelectric field stabilized. He found his voice, rough and damaged but functional. "You freed us. We owe you a life debt." He looked at Myriath, who was slowly raising her head. "Both of us do." "I don't want a debt," Amy said, standing up and checking her weapon. "A human combat rifle, modified for extreme cold. I want revenge. Those six-legged freaks ambushed my scout ship while we were conducting a survey mission. Killed Lieutenant Jake Morrison and Corporal Nina Vasquez before we could even get our shields up. Shot them right through the viewport." Her voice went cold. They screamed as the atmosphere vented. I could hear them over the comm. She turned to face the direction of the Zelkori camp. "I survived because I was in the cargo bay when they hit us. Managed to get into an escape pod, been tracking them for 3 days, waiting for an opening." She looked back at the dragons. "Then I saw what they did to you too. Figured we could help each other." Myriath spoke for the first time, her voice weak but clear. "Zelkori hunters, bear-trained warriors. You are one human." She paused. "We are wounded, weak." "Yeah," Amy checked her rifle's charge, "but we're all they've got. And I've learned something about being human that the rest of the galaxy hasn't quite figured out yet." She started walking toward the Zelkori camp, her boots crunching in the snow. "We don't know when to quit." Kravex exchanged a look with his sister. They were barely able to stand, let alone fight, but the human had freed them. More than that, she had offered them something precious, a chance for vengeance against their captors. He forced his battered body upright. Myriath did the same, swaying slightly. Together they followed the human figure through the blizzard. Amy glanced back at them and nodded once. The Zelkori use thermal detection and motion sensors. Their armor can withstand plasma fire and kinetic rounds. Their weapons can punch through ship holes. She smiled that dangerous smile again. "Good thing I'm not planning to fight fair." The wind howled across the frozen wasteland. Somewhere ahead, the Zelkori hunters waited in their camp, confident in their superiority. They had killed humans before. They had captured dragons. They thought themselves apex predators. They were about to learn why the galaxy had started to fear Earth's children. And why you should never, ever chain a dragon where a human might find it. Zelkori camp came into view through the swirling snow. 6 dome-shaped shelters arranged in a defensive circle, with a larger command structure in the center. Kravex could see the hunters moving between them, their 6 legs carrying them easily across the ice. They wore combat armor that gleamed even in the dim light of Callisto's distant sun. Amy crouched behind an ice ridge, studying the layout. She pulled out a small scanner from her suit pocket. 2 sentries on patrol. 4 inside, probably resting. They rotate every 6 hours. She looked at the dragons. "Can either of you still breathe fire?" Kravex tried. His throat burned, but only smoke emerged. The chains had drained too much of his energy. Myriath shook her head weakly. "Figured as much." Amy didn't seem disappointed. "Plan B, then." "Kravex, you're the bigger one. I need you to circle around to the west side. When I give the signal, make as much noise as you can. Draw their attention. A distraction," Kravex understood. "They will shoot me." "Not if you stay low and use the terrain. There's a crater system about 200 meters from their perimeter. Use it for cover. Just keep them looking your way." She turned to Myriath. "You and I are going in from the east. There's a blind spot between 2 of the smaller domes. Their sensors can't cover it because of the magnetic interference from the ice formations." Myriath's eyes widened. "You want to go inside their camp?" "I want my black box. It's in the command structure." Amy checked her rifle again. "And I want to make sure they never hurt anyone else again." Kravex felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. This human was planning to walk into the enemy camp, wounded, alone, except for a half-dead dragon. It was insane. It was also their best chance. He moved toward his position, each step sending fresh waves of pain through his body. The chains had damaged his wings badly. He couldn't fly, could barely glide. But he could still move, still fight if he had to. From his position in the crater system, Kravex watched Amy and Myriath approach the camp from the east. The human moved like a ghost, her white thermal suit blending perfectly with the snow. Myriath followed, her golden scales hidden beneath the ice and frost that had accumulated on her body. The 2 sentries continued their patrol, unaware. They were talking to each other in the clicking, hissing language of the Zelkori. Kravex's translator picked up fragments. They were discussing their next hunt, talking about the price dragon scales would bring on the black market. His rage built. These creatures had tortured him and his sister for profit. They had killed the humans' crew without hesitation. They saw themselves as superior, as having the right to take whatever they wanted. Amy's voice came through on a short-range comm channel she had patched into Kravex's translator. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Now Kravex roared. It was weaker than his normal battle cry, but in the silence of Callisto's frozen surface it echoed like thunder. He charged up from the crater, making himself as visible as possible. The reaction was immediate. The 2 sentries spun toward him, raising their weapons. Alarms blared from the camp. The 4 hunters inside emerged from their domes, armed and ready. Energy bolts cut through the air. Kravex dodged, using the crater edges for cover. The Zelkori weapons hit the ice around him, sending up clouds of vaporized water. He kept moving, kept roaring, kept their attention locked on him. Meanwhile, Amy and Myraeth slipped into the camp. The human moved with practiced efficiency. Staying in the blind spots, using the domes for cover, Myraeth followed, her claws silent on the ice. They reached the command structure. Amy pulled out a small explosive charge and placed it on the door lock. The blast was muffled, barely audible over the weapons fire directed at Kravex. Inside, Amy found what she was looking for. The black box from her ship sat on a table alongside other looted equipment. She grabbed it, securing it to her belt. Then she saw something else, a computer console still active, Zelkori hunting logs. Amy's hands flew over the controls. She downloaded everything. Names, locations, markets where they sold their captures. A whole network of illegal hunters operating in the outer systems. Evidence that could bring them all down. But the Zelkori were realizing something was wrong. One of them turned back toward the camp, sensors picking up the breach. He shouted a warning. Amy didn't hesitate. She pulled out 3 more explosive charges and started placing them throughout the command structure. Power cores, ammunition storage, fuel cells. Time to go, she told Myraeth. They ran for the exit. The hunter who had spotted them blocked their path. He was massive, even for a Zelkori, his armor covered in kill markings. He raised his weapon, the barrel glowing with stored energy. Myraeth hit him like a meteor. She was weak, wounded, half dead, but she was still a dragon. Her claws raked across his armor, finding the joints, the weak points. He screamed, trying to throw her off. Amy shot him 3 times in the head. The armor held for the first 2 shots. The third punched through. They ran. Kravex saw them emerge and broke off his distraction, racing toward them. The other 5 Zelkori hunters gave chase, firing as they ran. Amy triggered the explosives. The command structure erupted in a ball of fire that turned the night bright as day. The blast wave knocked 2 of the hunters off their feet. The others stumbled, momentarily blinded. The 3 fugitives didn't stop running. They plunged into the blizzard, leaving the burning camp behind them. But the Zelkori weren't finished. These were professional hunters who had tracked prey across dozens of worlds. A storm in darkness meant nothing to them. Their thermal sensors locked onto the heat signatures. Their combat armor protected them from the cold. And now they were angry. Amy led Kravex and Myraeth through a maze of ice canyons, trying to break their trail. Her suit scanner showed the hunters spreading out, attempting to surround them. They were using pack tactics, coordinating through their encrypted communication network. "We can't outrun them," Kravex said between gasping breaths. His injuries were taking their toll. Myraeth was worse, stumbling every few steps. "I know." Amy stopped in a narrow canyon, looking around. The ice walls rose 50 meters on either side, creating a natural corridor. "Which is why we're going to make our stand here. 3 of us against 5 of them," Myraeth said. "We are wounded. They are armored and armed. The mathematics do not favor us." Amy smiled that dangerous smile again. Math never stopped a human before. She started unpacking equipment from her suit. More explosive charges. A medical injector. A flare gun. "Here's what's going to happen. Kravex, I need you to collapse that ice wall." She pointed to the eastern side of the canyon. "Can you do it?" Kravex studied the wall. He could see the stress fractures, the weak points where the ice had formed imperfectly. In his prime, it would have been easy. Now, wounded and exhausted, it would take everything he had left. "Yes," he said. "Good. When they come through that canyon entrance, you bring down that wall. It won't kill them, but it will separate them. Then Myraeth and I handle whoever's on this side." Myraeth looked at the human with new respect. "You have fought before. In war." "Mars Rebellion, 3 years ago," Amy said quietly. "I was 18. Fresh out of training. We were sent to put down an independence movement that had turned violent." She loaded a new charge into her rifle. Learned real quick that survival isn't about being stronger or better armed. It's about being willing to do what the other guy won't. The first hunter appeared at the canyon entrance. His thermal sensors had locked onto them. He raised his weapon, preparing to fire. Kravex slammed his tail into the ice wall. The impact sent cracks racing up the frozen surface. He hit it again. The wall groaned. The hunter fired. The energy bolt missed Kravex by centimeters, melting a hole in the ice behind him. Myraeth lunged forward, using the last of her strength. She couldn't breathe fire, couldn't fly, but her claws still worked. She raked them across the hunter's sensor array, blinding him temporarily. Amy shot him in the knee joint. The armor there was thinner for mobility. The hunter went down, screaming. 2 more hunters entered the canyon. Kravex hit the wall one final time. The entire eastern face collapsed in an avalanche of ice and snow, cutting the canyon in half. 2 hunters were trapped on the far side, roaring in frustration, but 3 were on this side now. The odds hadn't improved much. Amy pulled out the medical injector and stabbed it into her thigh. Combat stimulants, military grade. Her pupils dilated. Her breathing quickened. The exhaustion and cold that had been dragging at her vanished, replaced by chemical-induced alertness. She charged the nearest hunter, firing as she ran. Her shots targeted specific points on his armor. The helmet seals, the joint connections, the vulnerable spots that every armor system had. The hunter swatted at her with one of his 6 legs. She rolled under it, came up shooting. One shot took out his primary weapon. Another destroyed his comm unit, but the hunter grabbed her with 2 of his legs, lifting her off the ground. His mandibles clicked in triumph. He was going to crush her. Kravex bit down on the hunter's rear leg. His teeth, designed to crack spaceship hulls, went through the armor like paper. The hunter dropped Amy, turning to face this new threat. Myraeth, gathering her remaining strength, jumped onto the hunter's back. She drove her claws into the armor's ventilation ports, the only openings in the otherwise sealed suit. The hunter bucked and twisted, trying to throw her off. Amy grabbed the flare gun and fired it directly into the hunter's face. The magnesium bright light overwhelmed his optical sensors. He stumbled backward, blind and bleeding. The second hunter on their side took aim at Amy. She was exposed, vulnerable, the weapon charged, the killing shot ready. The ice beneath the hunter's feet exploded upward. Amy had placed one of her charges there during her brief survey of the canyon. The blast didn't penetrate his armor, but it threw him into the air. He crashed down hard, his weapon skittering away across the ice. Kravex was on him immediately. Claws, teeth, raw fury. The hunter tried to defend himself, but Kravex had fought battles against creatures far larger and more dangerous. He knew where to strike, how to kill. The third hunter, seeing 2 of his companions down and the situation deteriorating, tried to retreat. Myraeth intercepted him. She was barely standing, but she was blocking his escape route. Amy walked up to the hunter, her rifle pointed at his head. "You killed my crew. You chained these dragons. You've been hunting sentient beings for profit." Her finger tightened on the trigger. "The galaxy will be better off without you." The hunter's translator activated. "Please." "Mercy, I have offspring." "So did Nina Vasquez," Amy said. 2 daughters, 5 and 7 years old. She pulled the trigger. The canyon fell silent except for the wind. On the other side of the ice wall, the remaining 2 hunters were trying to dig through. They would succeed eventually, but by then, Amy and the dragons would be long gone. Kravex looked at the human with new understanding. She was small, weak by galactic standards, but she had just helped kill 3 trained hunters through sheer determination and tactical brilliance. "Where do we go now?" he asked. Amy checked her scanner. "My escape pod is 15 kilometers south. It's damaged, but the distress beacon is still functional." She looked at both dragons. "If we can reach it, I can call for pickup. Get you 2 to a medical facility. Get this evidence to Earth Defense Force Command." Myraeth limped over to join them. "The remaining hunters will track us." "Let them try," Amy said. She started walking south, her footsteps steady, despite the drugs wearing off and exhaustion creeping back in. "I'm done running." They made it 8 kilometers before the remaining Zelkori hunters caught up. The 2 aliens had dug through the ice wall faster than expected and had pushed hard to close the distance. Now they stood on a ridge above the 3 fugitives, weapons ready, blocking the path to the escape pod. Amy's scanner showed no other routes. The terrain ahead was a sheer drop into a crevasse field that even the Zelkori couldn't cross safely. Behind them, more ice canyons that would trap them. The hunters had chosen their ambush point well. "Humans," one of the hunters said through his translator. His voice was cold, mechanical. "You have cost us much." destroyed our equipment, killed our pack members. For this, you will suffer before you die. Amy raised her rifle. The charge indicator showed less than 15%, maybe 20 shots, against 2 fully armored hunters who had learned from watching their packmates die. Not good odds. Kravex, she said quietly. Can you glide? Even just a little? The dragon looked at his damaged wings. They were torn, burned from the chains, but they might hold for one brief flight. Perhaps. Once. Not far. Myriath? The younger dragon shook her head. Her wings were worse, nearly useless. Amy made a decision. She pulled the black box from her belt and handed it to Kravex. The escape pod is 7 kilometers south-southwest. You can make that distance if you glide and use the wind currents. What are you planning? Kravex felt cold realization dawning. I'm planning to buy you time. Amy checked her remaining equipment. 1 explosive charge left. Half a clip of ammunition, the flare gun with 2 shots remaining. Get that black box to Earth forces. Make sure the evidence gets out. Make sure these hunters can't hurt anyone else ever again. No, Marieth said. We do not leave pack members behind. Amy laughed, a sound that held no humor. I'm not pack. I'm just a human who happened to find you. You freed us from chains, Kravex said. You fought beside us. You saved our lives. That makes you pack. He moved to stand beside her, facing the hunters. Dragons do not abandon their pack. Marieth took position on Amy's other side. Never. The human looked at them both. For a moment, her hard expression softened. Then it hardened again, but different now. Not cold. Determined. All right then, but we do this smart. No heroic charges. No wasted moves. We make every shot count. The Zelkori hunters advanced down the ridge. They were being cautious now, having seen what this unlikely group could do. They spread apart, covering angles, making sure they couldn't all be caught in a single blast. Amy waited until they were 30 meters away. Then she fired the flare gun straight up. The magnesium-bright projectile climbed into the dark sky and exploded, turning the area bright as midday. The hunter's optical sensors automatically compensated, but it took a precious second. In that second, Amy threw her last explosive charge. Not at the hunters, but at the ridge above them. The blast triggered an ice slide. Thousands of tons of frozen water came crashing down. The hunters tried to dodge, but the slide was too wide, too fast. It swept them off their feet and carried them down into the crevasse field below. But they weren't dead. Their armor protected them from the impact. They were already climbing back out, damaged but functional, and now beyond furious. Run, Amy said. They ran. The escape pod came into view. It was partially buried in ice, its hull scorched from atmospheric entry, but the distress beacon was still blinking. Amy practically fell through the hatch, Kravex and Myriath squeezing in after her. How long until pickup? Kravex asked. Amy checked the console. Her face went pale. The beacon's been transmitting for 3 days, but we're in the outer system. It could be hours. Could be days before anyone receives it and responds. Behind them, the hunters were approaching. They had taken up positions behind ice formations, preparing for a siege. They had all the time in the world. Their prey was trapped. Amy slumped against the pod's wall. I'm sorry. I thought we could make it. Kravex looked at his sister. Myriath looked back. A silent communication passed between them, the kind only siblings could share. Then they both looked at Amy. There is one option, Kravex said. Dragons have an emergency ability. We can send out a biological distress signal. It travels through quantum entanglement paths, reaching other dragons instantaneously across vast distances. Why didn't you use it before? Amy asked. Because it requires us to use the last of our life force, Myriath explained. We were too weak earlier. Even now, if we use it, we might not survive. Amy started to protest, but Kravex cut her off. You asked earlier why we never called for help when the Zelkori captured us. It's because we chose to endure rather than die, calling for aid that might never come. But now things are different. Now we have something worth dying for, Myriath finished. You brought us evidence that can stop these hunters. That can save other dragons, other species. That matters more than 2 lives. Amy wanted to argue, wanted to find another way. But she could see in their eyes that they had already made their choice. The dragons pressed their heads together, their bioelectric fields synchronizing. Energy began to build around them, a soft golden glow that grew brighter and brighter. They were broadcasting their location, their situation, a call for help that would reach every dragon within a light year. The glow faded. Both dragons collapsed. No, Amy crawled over to them. Their breathing was shallow. their hearts barely beating. "No, don't you die on me. Don't you dare." Hal sighed. The Zelkori hunters began their final approach. Then the sky lit up. Not with explosions or weapons fire, but with engines. Dozens of them. Ships were appearing in orbit. Dragon ships, responding to the distress call, and among them, highlighted by her pod scanner, a human destroyer. The Earth Defense Force had received her beacon. The Zelkori hunters looked up at the ships descending through Callisto's thin atmosphere. They tried to run. They didn't make it far. Amy held the 2 dragons as medical shuttles landed around the pod. Human medics and dragon healers rushed out. Someone was pulling her away, checking her for injuries. She fought them. "Save them first," she demanded. "They saved me. They saved so many others. You save them first." A dragon healer, ancient and wise, examined Kravex and Myrieth. He worked quickly, administering emergency treatments, stabilizing their vital signs. After what felt like hours but was only minutes, he looked at Amy. "They will live. Barely, but they will live." Amy finally let herself collapse. The medics caught her, carrying her toward a shuttle. As they lifted off, she looked back at the frozen moon where she had been stranded, where she had lost her crew, where she had found 2 dragons in chains and decided that some things were worth fighting for. The galaxy was a dangerous place, but it was also learning something important. Humanity was here now, and humans had a bad habit of interfering when they saw injustice. A bad habit of refusing to quit. A bad habit of fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves. 6 months later, Amy stood on a stage receiving the Interstellar Medal of Honor. Beside her stood 2 dragons, wings healed, scales gleaming. The evidence she had recovered had led to the dismantling of an entire illegal hunting network. Dozens of species had been saved. When asked about her actions on Callisto, Amy kept her answer simple. "I saw 2 dragons who needed help. What else was I supposed to do?" Behind her, Kravex and Myrieth spread their wings. A gesture of protection. Of family. Of pack. Some bonds were forged in chains and blood and snow. Those bonds never broke.